What if I told you that Nintendo, a company that has historically kept its game pricing pretty rigid, is finally making a move that actually benefits digital buyers in a meaningful way? Because that's exactly what's happening right now with the Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo has officially announced that starting in May, it plans to charge less for digital versions of its Switch 2 exclusive games compared to their physical counterparts. And this is a shift that could have a pretty big impact on how people choose to buy their games going forward. For years, one of the biggest complaints from players has been that digital games cost the same as physical copies, despite clearly lacking the additional costs associated with manufacturing cartridges, printing cases, and shipping inventory worldwide. Now, Nintendo is not only acknowledging that difference, but actually reflecting it in the price. And that alone makes this a pretty important development worth talking about. We're already seeing this new pricing strategy in action with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, one of the upcoming Switch 2 titles. If you want to pre-order the game digitally, it'll cost you $59.99, but if you prefer a physical copy, that jumps up to $69.99. That's a clean $10 difference, and it's not some limited time discount or special promotion. It's the actual standard pricing structure Nintendo is choosing to implement, at least for certain titles. What makes this even more interesting is that Nintendo has made it very clear that both versions of the game will offer the exact same experience. There's no bonus content locked behind one version, no performance differences, nothing like that. The only real distinction is how you get the game, either as a download or as a cartridge. And that's where the pricing split comes in. Nintendo explained that this change simply reflects the different costs associated with producing and distributing each format, which is about as straightforward as it gets. Physical games come with real-world expenses: manufacturing, packaging, logistics, retail distribution, while digital games don't have those same overhead costs. In theory, this pricing model makes perfect sense, and in reality, it's something a lot of players have been asking for across the entire industry, not just from Nintendo. What's surprising is not the logic behind it, but the fact that Nintendo is actually the one making the move here, considering how traditionally conservative the company has been with pricing and sales strategies. Now, before you assume this is going to apply across the board to every single Switch 2 game, there are a few important details to keep in mind. Nintendo also noted that retail partners ultimately set their own prices for both physical and digital games, which means there could still be variation depending on where you're buying from. On top of that, not every Switch 2 title is following the exact same pricing structure right now. Some games like Donkey Kong Bonanza and Pokemon Pocopia are priced at $69.99, while others like Mario Kart World are going even higher at $79.99. So while the cheaper digital pricing is definitely a real thing, it's also part of a broader pricing landscape that's still evolving and frankly a bit inconsistent at the moment. There's also the question of how this pricing strategy is going to play out globally. For example, in the UK, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book is currently priced at around $55.74 when converted to US currency, which suggests that regional pricing differences are still very much in effect. Nintendo hasn't clarified whether this digital discount approach will be standardized worldwide or adjusted based on each market, so that's something we'll have to keep an eye on as more games are announced and released. Another key piece of context here is the current state of the Switch 2 itself. When the console launched last year, it did so with record-breaking sales, proving once again just how strong Nintendo's brand and hardware appeal really are. However, more recent reports indicate that demand in the United States has started to slow down, leading Nintendo to scale back production. That doesn't necessarily mean the system is struggling, but it does suggest that the initial surge of excitement has begun to level off, which is a completely normal part of any console lifecycle. Still, it raises an interesting question. Is this move toward cheaper digital games purely about reflecting cost differences, or is also part of a larger strategy to maintain momentum and encourage more people to stay engaged with the platform? If you think about it, incentivizing digital purchases could benefit Nintendo in multiple ways. Digital sales eliminate the need for physical production, which reduces cost and increases margins. They also keep players more tightly integrated into Nintendo's ecosystem, making it easier to promote additional purchases, downloadable content, and services. And from a consumer perspective, saving $10 per game is definitely not insignificant, especially as game prices continue to trend upward overall. So while Nintendo's explanation is focused on production and distribution costs, the broader implications of the shift could be much more strategic. At the same time, this change might also influence how players think about physical versus digital ownership. Physical copies still have their advantages. You can resell them, trade them, collect them. But if the price gap continues to grow, more players might start leaning toward digital simply because it offers better value upfront. And if that happens on a larger scale, it could gradually reshape the market in ways that go beyond just Nintendo. So overall, this is a pretty fascinating move. It's practical, it's consumer friendly, and it's coming from a company that doesn't always make changes like this quickly. Whether it becomes a consistent standard or remains something that varies from game to game is still up in the air. But either way, it's definitely something worth paying attention to as the Switch 2 continues to evolve. If you found this video helpful or interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you want even more in-depth discussions like this, check out my Patreon, where the latest exclusive takes a deep dive into whether Xbox consoles and PCs are essentially becoming the same platform. It's a really interesting topic that I think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, and as always, game on.